Cutter Top 10, Cutter Top 10. You know you liked it a lot. Time to see who is the best and the worst at stuff. You know, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, NASCAR, wrestling. If I have to, so please join me. Why don't you read? This is Cutter's Top 10. Hey there, Heather, ho there! It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. We're ready to rumble! Oh. Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond, and here are some top 10s. The block starting on Wednesday, November 25th, 2015. U.S. Thanksgiving is a day away. My comedy routine is 2 days away. Not much going on in the news. Oh yeah, the Warriors are 16-0. Congratulations to Golden State. How are they so dominant all of a sudden? So anyway, here are the top 10s, and the first top 10 will be the top 10 most heartbreaking losses in NHL history. Number 10, the Wild Wink. Despite injuries to Wayne Gretzky and other things, the Kings were still going strong in '93 when they beat Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto in order to face Montreal in their first ever Stanley Cup final. The Kings won Game 1, but thanks to a Jacques Demers gamble on Marty McSorley's stick being illegal, Montreal got a power play in the final minute, scored the tying goal, and then scored the winning goal in overtime to split it and won. It would have been disastrous if Montreal was down 2-0. So anyway, the Kings lost Game 3 in overtime to John LeClair, and then down 2-1, they had a chance. Unfortunately, when Thomas Ostrom had a decent shot, he missed. Patrick Waugh actually ended up winking at Sandstrom. And of course, LeClair scored the winning goal again in overtime, make it 3-1, and then the Kings won Game 5. And the last time a Canadian team has held the Stanley Cup. Number 9, crushing the Juggernaut. There are a lot of teams that should have won the championship, but didn't close it out. High on the list is the 2011 Canucks, who had 117 points and were the best team in the NHL by far. They led the NHL in goals scored and fewest goals against, so basically the goal differential was big. The Canucks were huge favorites to win the Cup, so they beat the Predators, the Sharks, and the Blackhawks. Surprised with the Blackhawks to finally get over their nemesis and was ready to raise the Cup one more. Vancouver ended up winning games 1 and 2 by close margins. Alex Burrows scoring a goal with less than 20 seconds left in game 1, and then scoring the overtime winner within 12 seconds of Game 2. And then Vancouver went to Boston, lost by a combined score of 12-1, won Game 5, but lost Game 6 in Boston. No big deal, they win Game 7 on home ice, that's what you do. Unfortunately, strange as it sounds, Boston won 4-0. I think Marchand was the guy who scored 2 goals in that Game 7, and Vancouver just stunk it up on home turf. No worse for wear. But unfortunately, millions of dollars of damage and bad press ruined the city of Vancouver after that game. Number 8, a game of inches. In 2004, the Flames were taking on the Lightning in the Cup Finals. The Flames won Game 5 in overtime on a Saprikin goal. Or was it a Gillen? I can't remember. I think it was Saprikin. And then at 2-2, Martin Jelena, who scored the series-clinching goal in all 3 playoff rounds beforehand for Calgary against Vancouver, Detroit, and San Jose. Charged to the net and apparently went over the line. Jelena thought it was over the line, but the red light didn't go on, and a lot of replays came, but there was no clear evidence the puck had gone over the goal line. So the Lightning would win double overtime by Martin St. Louis, and then in Game 7 on home turf, they beat the Flames, thanks to Fedotenko. But the thing is about Game 6 is that they were using the Canadian replays, and none of the CBC replays had the puck go completely over the goal line, whereas ABC's did for some reason. So that was kind of strange. Number 7, the Easter Epic. Washington was up 3-1 in the division semis, or the conference quarterfinals, they want to call it nowadays, but lost Game 5-6. No big deal. They had Game 7 on home turf. And it was the longest Game 7 in NHL history. And this is like all of NHL history, not just the 20s and 30s. Caps were up 2-1, and then the Islanders with 5 minutes left tied it. I think it was Alan Kerr, I can't remember. And then all through the time, it went through to quadruple overtime. And Pat LaFontaine got a lucky bounce and then slapped the puck, and it went past Bob Mason, and the Islanders came back from a 3-1 series deficit to win this game. Washington was just terrible. However, Washington the next year in a Game 7 on their own rink in the division semis, aka conference quarterfinals against Philly, they won. Dale Hunter made sure Washington didn't falter flat twice on Game 7 overtimes in a row. Number 6, Mario's Fall. Well, Mario Lemieux looked unstoppable. And Pittsburgh looked unstoppable. They actually had won, 17 in a row without, no, they won 16 in a, no, they won 17 in a row. And then they ended up tying the Devils on the last day of the playoffs. They took out the Devils before they faced the Islanders. The Penguins had a chance to win the series on Long Island in Game 6, but failed. So it was Game 7 in Pittsburgh, no big deal. Penguins were out shooting the Islanders with 5 minutes left in the game, 26-11, but yet only put 1 puck plus Glenn Healy, whereas the Islanders put 3 pucks. Mr. Barrasso. But thanks to Mario Lemieux's helpfulness, Yager and Stevens scored to tie it at 3, and then overtime back in, with Pittsburgh looking good. Pittsburgh looked good. But with 5 minutes left, in the first overtime, David Folek got a 2-0-1, made a big goal, and got the Islanders to the conference finals against the Habs, which of course Montreal won. Who would have known? Maybe Montreal-Pittsburgh, it would have been an epic Eastern final. Well, a conference final. Never called the Eastern Conference until 94. But the Islanders made a point to whack and hack Lemieux, because obviously, the old saying, cut off the head and the body will die. Something like that. Number 5, the head check. In Game 7 of the 2000 Conference Finals, Philadelphia got angry because they were up 3-1, and thanks to a Larry Robinson tirade on the team bus, the Devils wins in Games 5 and 6, so they had to go back to Philly for Game 7. They should have went to the Stanley Cup Finals against Dallas, and maybe Philly would have won. And Roger Nielsen was actually fighting cancer at that time. But the problem was that Eric Lindros, who came back from a concussion, it was a nasty concussion last year, the year before in '99, because in Nashville he nearly died. So anyway, he was hit by a bad head check that sent him to the hospital. Thanks to Scott Stevens. Well, he is Kitchener, so is Larry Robinson, former Kitchener Rangers. Unfortunately, the Devils, I believe John Madden or some unknown guy, scored a goal with 2 minutes left, and the Devils went on to the Stanley Cup Finals, but Dallas beat them anyway. The NHL fined the Flyers $10,000 for not giving details on Lindros' injury. And Lindros ended up being traded a year later after missing the 2000-2001 season. Number 4, no goal. The Buffalo Sabres fans are still gritting their teeth about the '99 Cup final. In Game 5, they lost to Dallas in Dallas, and then they needed to win on home turf to make it a Game 7 in Dallas. It was 1-1 at the end of regulation, and then they went through 3 overtimes before Brett Hall scored a famous goal to end it. However, the problem was that Hall's skate was inside the blue paint, aka the crease, which you cannot do that. The Sabres fans sat around for 20 minutes, but it wasn't, and the Stars went on to win the Stanley Cup. Now, there's a fact of the matter that Buffalo fans, that there were too many goals being waved off because of the skating and the crease deal in '99. So the NHL made a memo saying that as long as you have possession of the puck while you're in the crease, you're allowed to score. That was never explained, but that's true. Number 3, meltdown in Beantown. The Leafs are so frustrated. Only once since the famous lockout of 2004-2005, which killed that season, have the Leafs made the playoffs, and that was 2013, and they would face Boston. The thing that ticked me off was that all Ottawa had to do was beat Boston in Boston on the last day of the year, and the Leafs would have ended up facing the Canadians, would have faced Montreal in the first round and not Boston. And Boston would have taken on Ottawa, and Boston may have won that one. But anyway, the Leafs were down 3-1 and somehow got to Game 7, the same day as the Rangers-Capitals game, which I have mentioned on previous top 10s. That with the Rangers and Caps, that the Rangers were up 5-0, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I should say on Facebook, Rangers-Leafs, this would be an epic series. But I didn't want to jinx myself. And the Leafs were up 4-1 in the third period. I'm like, okay, fantastic. It looks good. And then somehow Nathan Horton scored with 11 minutes left to make it 4-2. Okay, the Leafs can just sit back. But Lou Cheech scored with 1:22 left. And then about 30 seconds later, Bergeron tied the game and got the overtime winner. It was a collapse of epic proportions in Toronto. One of the worst playoff collapses of all time. And it was set up a nice Leafs-Rangers series. Maybe the Rangers would have got lucky and went to the conference finals instead of being taken up by Boston. Number 2, Bonehead. The Oilers were headed for their third straight Stanley Cup in '86 and would face Calgary in the division finals, or conference semis, if you want to call it that. It went back and forth, and in Game 7, and then they forced a Game 7 in Edmonton. Steve Smith was called because someone got injured. I don't know who got injured. McTavish? I'm not sure. So anyway, it was 2-2 in the final few minutes when Lanny McDonald bounced a simple shot. No, Steve Bozak bounced a simple shot that Grant Fuhr snagged and then gave it to Steve Smith. Steve Smith was trying to make a pass in front of his own net, but he accidentally hit something, the back of Grant Fuhr's pad, and game over. Well, the Flames were up 3-2, but the Oilers might missed a chance, meaning that Smith scored the winning goal on his own team. That wasn't Steve Bozak. My apologies. Perry Barrison was given the... I knew it was an obscure player like Barrison. That's it. So Perry Barrison got the goal. Smith was just terrible. And his teammates actually stood by him in solidarity. Because the next year, in '87, the Oilers won the Cup, and Steve Smith was the first Oiler after Gretzky to pick up the Cup. That would have been a 5 straight Stanley Cup run from '84 to '88, had it not been for Steve Smith's mistake. And number 1, Game 6, 2013. The Boston Bruins, of course, after the Toronto collapse, and then taking care of the Rangers and Penguins in 9 games total, the Bruins would take on the Blackhawks, who had to handle a 3-1 series deficit against the Red Wings in the conference semis. So anyway, Bruins looked like they're going to go back to Game 7 in Chicago. 2-1 with a minute and a half left. Corey Crawford was pulled, and Boston thought they had everything going. But Brian Bickle scored a goal with 76 seconds left. And it's like, well, okay, we'll get overtime, 2-2. But then, for some strange reason, 17 seconds later, Dave Bolland, who the Leafs picked up in free agency the day, well, after he was let go of the Hawks, the Bruins went from a chance at Game 7 to being down 3-2 and couldn't score a goal, and Chicago won the Stanley Cup on Boston ice. It was just amazing how Boston managed to handle it right after that. So anyway, that's all the top 10 stuff. There'll be some other top 10s coming up soon.